Getting the Sentinel comrades. The kaiju are coming to destroy the portal. Or what do they call it? It's the terminal.
Right?
The terminal. This is my
terminal.
game, and I don't even remember all the jargon.
Terminal.
We must deploy Operation Aegis, comrades. That does sound like a very late Soviet bloc thing. Something you would have seen in The Death of Stalin. Great film, by the way.
That's a class.
Folks, as we are wrapping up our year in podcasting, it is our final game-focused episode. My pick for the year that I forced my fellow comrades to play. I forced them to get in the Sentinel, to expose a little bit of skin and swipe the start button.
Yeah, I played this game naked the entire time.
Of course, that's how you have to get into the pod and get naked. If you were a Sentinel pilot, where would your activation be? Where would your activation be?
What did he say?
He said his taint, the gooch.
Well,
just dig it around in there. Just,
I mean, I feel like I would go so like magical girl transformation and like go for the wrist.
For the wrist?
Mine, I'd probably rub my belly.
That's a good one.
All right, so yeah, we're talking 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. In my mind, I thought this game was older than it was. Not in the sense of dated, but just like I felt like it was more in like I say classic, but like that's not even right. I knew it wasn't like a classic
Man, it's probably
game,
closer to vintage than you think.
So it released in Japan in 2019 and worldwide almost a year later in 2020. It was affected by COVID. It did affect its very tail end of production and then distribution as well. Primarily the worldwide release, because of its English localization, had struggle with COVID. Would you believe it that they had to have voice actors, the voice cast, at least some of them, go and create sound booths in their own apartments and deliver all of their voice work via basically a Zoom call, and which resulted in a shit ton of extra work for the audio team to then clean that up. People have got towels duct taped to their bathroom to create like, a soundproof little studio. And I think it was like only one of the protagonists had their dialogue complete before the world ended, before the Deimos attacked. The Chinese made Decode came in and attacked the world. Yeah, so I played this game because I had seen it like on basically every JRPG Reddit or visual novel Reddit or anything. It's like, oh, this is a must play. A kind of unsung gem. A diamond in the rough game that everybody needs to play. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I played.
I'm glad that this actually counts as a diamond in the rough, because sometimes Reddit will do that. Be like, yo, have you heard of this little known game called Skyrim?
And so I had played so this game is made by Vanillaware, and I had played their recent game, Unicorn Overlord, first. So I had been more primed to play it because I was like, wow, Vanillaware does some really cool stuff. I love their art direction I love their hand-drawn aesthetic and the unique gameplay and how they.
What kind of game is Unicorn Overlord?
It's
not a visual novel style.
No,
right?
no, it's a
tactical-ish.
It's like a tactical RTS kind of RPG hybrid in a way. It is battle. There's like a overarching it's a very JRPG kind of classic JRPG story, medieval fantasy kind of story, and the gameplay then has lots of cutscenes like that, and then gameplay revolves around more actual RTS style combat where you're on a map and you've got objectives and you are sending units out in real time, and there's different tactical choices that go on there, and there's some combat that goes on in real time, but then it's when squads intersect, one of yours with an opponent's, it then goes into these turn-based battles, but it's like a unique auto battler style, where you are setting tactics based off of unlocked abilities, and you will prioritize and build out your squads to conduct combat in certain ways. You've got your mages in the background, prioritize backline fighters, buff characters at this threshold, focus on healing when party members get to this HP. So you're fine tuning and tweaking.
So it's got the Final Fantasy 12 Gambit system built into it.
Yeah, it's essentially that. And you're not actually taking turns. The battles happen automatically, the auto battler, but you are determining how that'll go
programming
via
everything
strategy
to happen.
Yeah.
All according to the machinations of your plans.
Yeah, and so I ended up playing that game for like 70 hours. So again, I was already primed to be like, who's this developer, Vanillaware? They have this kind of sweetheart deal with Atlas, who, has become one of my kind of
JRPG royalty.
Yeah, and always paying attention to what Atlas is doing. And, it's a bit of a hierarchy, right? Vanillaware has this deal. They're not owned by, and we'll get into there was some interesting bit with the development process of this game and their relationship to Atlas. But it's like Vanillaware is essentially in partnership with Atlas, which is then, run by Sega. So it's, Vanillaware, Atlas, Sega. So yeah, that's a good transition into the development of this game. So the concept of the game originated from the director, who is George Kamitani. He was the director on their previous game, Dragon's Crown, and he was getting really kind of worn out by that development cycle. And this was in 2013. And so this is not when production started. This was just the germ of his idea. It was end of the year, and he's really stressed out. They've been doing fantasy games in that aesthetic for quite a long time, and he's an artist at heart. And so he was doing all the scenario art and character art and all that, and was getting really stressed out about that and just needed something fresh. So it was a New Year's kind of ritual. He would try to draw something new. So he was drawing a sci-fi aesthetic at that time. So that kind of created that kernel of the Sentinels, and he kind of liked where that was going. He had this idea to pitch to spin it up into a game, and it was originally going to be made in partnership with they keep referring to it as a certain company. Basically, there must have been some type of NDA signed that keeps him from saying in interviews who the company was.
Yeah,
as I explain it, Matt, I think you'll be able to infer who it was. And so it was originally being pitched as, he says, to a certain company with the intention of it being spun out into a toy line. That was actually its main driving factor. It didn't need to have, the big thing is it didn't need to have international appeal, didn't need to be a big thing. It was mainly meant to be kind of a driver for toys, manga, other things as well, in particularly inside Japan.
Does the name rhyme with Bandai Bamco?
I think so. That was my instinct as well, is that it was something for Bandai to fall in line with their Gundam. Their history with Gundam. So
you say manga and kids' toys, and it's just who has their hand in all of those and is also producing games?
A certain company. Mine
also briefly went to Square, but Square doesn't do toys as much as they do just statues.
Yeah, but they do have manga and anime as well in their portfolios.
It was From Software,
Kodakawa. He was Italy. He's how cool would it be to have one of my designs turned into a plastic bottle that I could build? And I'm yeah, that would be pretty sick. But then it turned out that he forgot that based off of their deal from Dragon's Crown with Atlas, is that Atlas had right of first refusal on their next project. So he went to them and was yeah, Dragon's Crown is almost done. But there was a bit of a delay that was happening at the time. So they're kind of things are a little bit rocky, wasn't entirely set, but he's oh, we've got this thing. It's not in your niche. You wouldn't like it, blah, blah, blah.
I'm working on something, but you really don't want it.
It reads very much like that. And they're basically what the fuck are you talking about? Of course we want it. Dragon's Crown isn't coming out now, so let's lock this in. So they snapped it up immediately. So those other plans ended up going nowhere, and Atlas produced produced the game, and 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim was born as we know it. Development was, as we'll describe more about the game itself, and for those who play, I think could imagine, particularly with the elements of Vanillaware's unique art style, how intense development on this and complicated development of this game would be. And a lot of it goes back to the choice to have 13 individual protagonists and to have all that intersecting story. So from like a scaffolding narrative structure, it's very complex. And then there was other complications that was kind of interesting that I don't have the expertise to fully dive into, but it had to do with their art style, that they're trying to deliver more kind of emotive scenes. So they had to kind of revamp their catalog of animations. Like they were trying to push new grounds for them as a studio to have these like kind of really well acted and emotive scenes. Like they said, the example they gave is like, say one of the characters, Miura, is like trying to apologize effusively to someone, but like his like normal animation is just like him kind of tilting his hat down, and that doesn't evoke what they're trying to do. So they had to like either scrap scenarios that weren't working because of that, or develop new layers. And because of, again, it's the nature of the type of animation that they're doing with these like 2D art on kind of these 3D backgrounds. They're not really 3D, but like they have the illusion of 3D background.
Like a diorama type background.
Yeah.
It's because it's largely these kind of stills in the background, but then with layers depending on NPCs that are present, with the more detailed animation of the protagonist characters. And to get those more emotive things, it was just so much work. The director was like, it was originally 8 characters, and then I wanted to do 13 because like why not? And that decision really came back to bite me in the ass later, because
it do be like that sometimes as a creative, when you're like, man, this would be really cool, and I think we can do it. And then like 6 months later, you're like, why the fuck did I ever say this would be cool?
Scope creep is a real thing. And so he discusses how like he's a good boss in this sense, if the accounts are to be believed, but he's basically just like, he took on all that extra work himself. He like shut himself in his office, and he was like, I was rejoicing when the rest of the company was on vacation so that I could stay in the office and work and feel like I was catching up on things that I had missed, because he was trying to take on so much himself. So,
that's always a fun, toxic
not healthy
place
for
to
him.
get mentally.
Yeah, not good for his mental health, but at least
Well, when everyone else is out of the office, I can work unimpeded for 8 hours straight.
Probably more like 12 hours at least. So yeah, it was an intense development cycle, and then obviously complicated at its tail end by COVID. So the game released, like I said, it was in like November 2019 in Japan, and September 2020 worldwide. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
yes,
so.
September 2020. And so it released and released to largely positive reviews, an aggregate of like, in the mid to high 80s, like 97% recommendation on OpenCritic. The story
also
was
initially only released on Steam and Switch, if I remember
no,
correctly.
incorrect. It was originally meant to be PS4 and PS Vita exclusive. And eventually the Vita got canned because of, again, the strained development. The Switch release didn't happen until 2022. April 2022. I don't actually know that it's on PC.
You played
It's
it on
not
Switch.
on PC, you're right.
I'm pretty sure it's just PS4 and Switch. I played it on
'Cause
PlayStation.
I remembered that because I looked into it because I thought it would be a cool Steam Deck game. I
It
forgot that
would.
Vanillaware games don't go to Steam.
Yeah, it would. It absolutely would. But it's PS4 and Switch.
I played it on the Switch.
Yeah. I played it
I
on...
also played it on the Switch.
I played it on PlayStation. Yeah, I mean, like, so I played it before the Switch 2 released. I would have maybe considered a physical copy. So it was, announced at the 2015 Tokyo Game Show, but, didn't come out obviously for years at a time because of continued delays, and they were updating some of their older games. There's like the Odin Sphere remaster re-release. For the life of me, I don't know how you pronounce the the Odin Sphere. I don't even know if it's a remake or a remaster, but it's Leaf Roster. It's basically like a Norse word. And then they did like Dragon's Crown, and they did another kind of remake of one of their older games. And this is interesting. Yeah, so in early 2019, they released like this kind of a demo, kind of like a beta. They called it the prologue, and it was basically they were getting feedback on it. And interestingly enough, that prologue featured a teaser for what would become Unicorn Overlord. So that was also in production at that point.
Hilarious.
So in terms of sales, I think it was always like well enough. It wasn't like a breakout commercial success. It had like
I saw
a
it
dedicated
hit like 3 million after Switch release.
No,
That's
it
pretty
was
solid.
It was a gradual thing.
Yeah.
It eventually found its audience. And again, has kind of achieved this kind of cult level success. Not to say that 3 million is kind of, cult classic, but that's pretty good. That's not bad. I'm pretty sure it at least made its money back.
Yeah, it's one of those where like 3 million in context just depends on the company. Like 3 million for Bethesda title, not great. 3 million for Metroid, incredible. The most sales we've ever had. So I'm sure for some
ending. So this was actually I don't know that actually it hit 3 million, unless that's a newly updated one. But so it was initially in its Japan release. In that first week, it sold like short of 35,000 units. So it was like 5th place on the charts. Was considered low, and
surpassed a million in August 2023.
Exactly.
Maybe. I misremembered the number.
But that's 2 years ago, so it's probably crept up more since then.
But yeah, it definitely started to pick up a little bit of steam through positive word of mouth, and similar reasons as to why it came on my radar. Right, people recommending it pretty forcefully in a lot of ways, and it. So I booted this up, I think, in March of this year. I don't have my record sheet in front of me where I keep track of all those things, but it was kind of this, like, I'm trying to think of the right word. I'm debating between transcendent and transportive. It was this experience as I'm, like, kind of diving into it, that like as I was uncovering more and more and like getting past like the first few kind of prologues of some of the characters, I'm just like, holy shit, this is something like truly special, in the sense that like this is one of those kind of core examples of this is something that could only be done in a video game, that this is one of those rare titles that could not be achieved in the experience as it exists could not be achieved in a medium like a book or film. I'm sure they could make a film adaptation, but it would be so much more generic sci-fi than, because to be most critical, a lot of the individual plots of some of the characters are relatively tropey sci-fi stuff. It's not like anything groundbreaking, but it's just the way it's presented and the mystery that's unfolding of how these things are intersecting, and this non-linear nature of it as you are uncovering these different paths through each protagonist's story was just like, wow, this is crazy. And I'm gonna be honest, I've played the game fully, and I watched another playthrough in preparation to refresh my memory for the episode, and which is hilarious because I could have just played it again. I think so. It was broken into 2 videos, and so the playthrough I watched was total like 36 hours, and my playthrough was probably close to that. However, I was able to watch at higher speed and fast forward through the chunks of the battles that didn't have dialogue in them, and cut out a good chunk of it. But like, it's a lot. So much of it a visual novel, right? So you can't like skip all that stuff. And so
skip through all the dialogue until you get to the combat.
I've played it and I've watched through it now twice, and I still don't fully wrap my head around all the intricacies of the plots and the timeline and timelines, and is there a timeline, as the full spoilers we'll get into. I think that's just, we should move into like the basic kind of story setup. And the general premise is, it's high school kids and fighting giant machine kaiju. The director says that a lot of the story plot was inspired by Matt, you'll correct me, is it shoujo anime? Is that the young girl equivalent to shonen? Like, that was a lot of his inspiration for a good number of these storylines, and it's kind of obvious because, you know, the women in the cast really drive so much of the story and are some of its most central figures.
They're the best characters, especially one particular.
That's one thing also that Vanillaware is known for is giving their we should be clear, it's the adult characters that we're talking about here, but they give them well-rounded assets, shall we say.
Ms. Morimura, I am not feeling well.
I need to take a rest in the nurse's office during lunch.
Yes.
This is Morimura. I believe I'm having a fever. Can you can you feel my forehead, please? Yeah, so the general plot, it revolves around the 13 protagonists, the different characters as they move through these different eras. And so the starting plot is that there are these characters from, I believe it's 4 separate eras in Japan. And these Sentinels are capable of time travel, and they are all these characters are intersecting as they are trying to fight off the invasion forces of the Daimos, the mechanical kaiju that are being produced by the evil Shikishima Corporation in the far future, and that they have destroyed the city and are going to destroy the world in the furthest future timelines, and that they are following the Sentinels back through the past to kind of cleanse all of time, and the various characters are intersecting with their level of knowledge and agency around what is happening with the defense of humanity as they are trying to stop the kaiju by implementing at the behest of Miss Morimura Operation Aegis, which there is these terminals that are located throughout time that the Daimos are trying to infiltrate and destroy, and if they close them all down, they will. If they close the terminals, they'll defeat the kaiju. And so we're getting these interspersed cuts of.
No, they'll defeat the Sentinels.
So what we learn is it's like the final battle is what's ongoing there as they're defending the terminals, and the different plot lines that are unfolding throughout these various times. And we are slowly introduced to more characters as time progresses, and that I guess we can move into, and this is where I really want to start getting your guys' opinions on the gameplay. So these stories... So,
can I interject really quickly?
Go ahead.
Because I don't want to forget a comment
Absolutely.
I have. The final battle, I was very disappointed that you don't get to just have all 13 of them.
I mean, to be fair, it's fucking crazy as is.
Yeah, fair.
I remember playing the final battle, and Sentinel's turn comes up, so everything pauses. And I'm just like, I can't see anything that's on this screen. It's completely just filled with colors and all sorts of things as missiles are coming in from every direction, as it's meant to be so overwhelming. So we'll get to that at the end. But yeah, so the game unfolds through. There's technically 3 sections. I don't fully count the third one, even though I probably should have invested more time in like the mystery file one that like basically helps you, like once you unlock these things, it like can help you you have to like piece together. It's for the YouTube lore heads, Yeah. It's for them to be able to make the lore explainer videos. It's for them to have all the files, all the data on a gigantic fucking flowchart. Speaking of flowcharts, we'll get there, to decipher the order that all these things are happening in. And the other 2 sections are really like where that's like the true gameplay. And they are the visual novel sections where you are following each character through their own branching pathways. And that's where it gets most interesting, and where I was like truly starting to feel like, okay, this is something special, as I'm trying to figure out what are it was almost almost like puzzle-ish in certain circumstances where you're trying to figure out what's the actual trigger that's going to get me this new keyword that will unlock this next section that I haven't gone, that like, where do I need to deviate in the path that I have now taken several times to get this extra bit of story. And so I already mentioned keywords. So the major gameplay function of those visual novels is the thought cloud system. And I want to get your guys' opinions on how you felt about the thought cloud and how it was implemented. So as you progress through the story, and some will happen in linear fashion, and then others will be how you're interacting with those as you build out these keywords. And so keywords will get added to the thought cloud, and you can internalize them, think about them, and it'll give you like a little bit of interior monologue as the character thinks about it, questions something, gives a little bit of lore, starts developing the story, and then you have to figure out how you will use that keyword to interact with an object, another NPC, something else, to trigger a next bit of conversation. And as you are slowly filling out this keyword thing, so too does the flow chart that I mentioned of each individual character's story arc. And you will progress to various stages until you hit roadblocks. And we'll discuss the roadblocks in a second. But yeah, what was your guys' thought of just like the gameplay section part of the visual novels, not like their content, but the implementation of this thought cloud system?
So I found it very engaging. I'm gonna talk a little bit about just my general thoughts about aspect in general, which is that this game made me feel like I was reading a book, and it's different, but the feelings that it evoked and how it made me want to continue the stories was very similar to how I feel about reading a good book that I don't want to put down. I have one complaint about the thought cloud mechanics, because otherwise I did really enjoy the kind of puzzling related to them. I just wish every time you started a protagonist story, it wouldn't highlight all of them unless there was something new. It got really annoying to go through like all of the ones I've already heard like 10 different times already.
Yakisoba-pan.
But you've got the fast forward thing, right? So it would you can make it quick. When you start, it even sounds like a VCR fast forwarding as you do it. You'll come back into a scene, and every keyword will be highlighted green again, which means it can be considered. What you want to do is you just want to
burn through them. You
burn through them all until you get, and you're holding like the fast forward button.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't fast forward through something you haven't heard before.
Right. Yes.
Which was a quality of life feature that was so good for how, again, these stories are meant to be felt, as in, again, you are going to be repeating parts of these scenarios a lot. So it really helped from being tedious. So yeah, you would burn through them. You would just fast forward through the ones you don't. And like, oh, here's a new one. I've considered it now. And it gives you a little bit more of a hint of what to go on. But I get what you're saying.
It just got to a point where it just felt a little tedious in time, just like, I don't know, wasted my time a little. But like, not enough for me to dislike the system.
If I was to complain about it in that way, almost at a certain point, you kind of hit like a critical mass. Yeah. So exactly. You hit a critical mass at one point where it's like, it actually makes the puzzle part of it a little bit easier to sometimes non-existent, because it's just like, yes, I just have these things, I'm just going to burn through them, and it becomes a brute forced process of elimination. And it can kind of make that not as satisfying, where it's like when you're kind of in like the beginning to middle parts of each protagonist story is where it's really at its most affecting, where it's like you still have so many paths at your disposal and trying to figure out and prioritize which one. And sometimes they lead you to dead ends that aren't actually that important and don't go anywhere. So it's like these highs and lows that I think kind of really kept the pacing interesting. But yeah, once you hit that kind of critical point where it's like you've essentially collected almost every keyword and you just got to kind of cycle through them.
That's when I started to feel that way. Really, is you're nailing it. Is that point of where it's just like, I'm on the last thing. Like, just I don't need to read through all of this.
I forgive it because of, again, how difficult that has to be to manage.
I want a picture of their story flow chart.
Oh,
I want to see how big that thing is.
Oh my God. I don't even know how. Like, I mean, yeah. What's the software that Nathan Fielder uses in the rehearsal? His flowcharting software.
Yeah. Oh my God. What is it? I don't remember.
I don't know, but they must have a premium subscription to that thing.
Yeah. Jesus.
So Matt, what were your thoughts on the thought cloud?
I mean, mostly you guys have covered through anything unique that I would have had to say. I never really found any frustration through it, but I'm also a sicko, and I have no problem sitting there and not fast forwarding through things, just listening to them, repeat.
It's definitely got to scratch the completionist part of your brain of, I got to fill out every single path on these characters, which is an interesting question that I want to get your opinion on. Andrew and I kind of discussed this based on that playthrough that I was watching. How did you, and Andrew, you can say as well, how did you guys handle your progression of the characters? Like, Matt, did you try to just 100% each one on their own, or get everything you could out of each one, or mix things in here and there? How'd you handle it?
I basically tried to go as far as I could with one until it felt like I was basically at a point where I couldn't find that next thing I needed, and then I'd move on.
Okay. I played one protagonist and then went to the next and the next, and just essentially kept playing whoever was the lowest percentage, and just I was leveling them all up like my Pokemon, effectively.
Yeah.
I was being a good trainer in that regard. I wasn't just throwing it all into my Charizard. I went by the lowest, and I also played the narrative. Like, I didn't ever specifically until you've narrowed it down to like one path. I never really was focused on taking a specific path. I just kind of let the path come to me.
Interesting. But yeah, I was like saying to Andrew how, like, of the playthrough that I watched, because I handled it very I guess almost kind of in the median between you guys. It's like I would kind of go pretty close to a point where somebody would be either that I've hit a wall, or that maybe I've hit a lock that, like, you've got to meet some other criteria. And it's like, if I've got somebody locked, I would then try to get each person then up to that kind of threshold. And it felt natural. I would like come to a lot of these same kind of locks at the same time for each of them. But then, so I'm watching this playthrough, and the way that this person was doing theirs was like, you are a crazy person. They were 100%ing each individual character at a time, as far as you could, again, when not hitting some barrier, to the point where they have maybe like 10 or 11 of the characters at 100% ready to go to the final battle. And outside of Goto, who is like truly locked behind, you cannot, you're basically meant to do his last,
like 12%.
And like, you can't do his until the majority have hit like that 80-90% finished on theirs. With the exception of him, it's like he had like 3 characters at 0. He hadn't even done the prologue for some of them. And I'm like, that's insane. Like, to me, I was like, it was like those were like the thresholds, right? Like, I made sure that if I had, as soon as somebody new unlocked, I made sure to get through their prologue. And so that they were like all kind of at these same
I definitely made sure to do each prologue before progressing. That's an insane person method.
It was just crazy to me. I'm just like you're, because there, it's like a lot of times things are getting spoiled.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, like, kind of that's one way to almost beat the concept.
Undercuts like so much of what was going on. They're not like truly drastic, but there are some things where it just completely ruins the early parts of some of their stories, because it's like the mystery is gone. Like, some of these like core bits have been uncovered. So it's like, the mystery is gone. So its impact is completely neutered.
When I read a choose your own adventure story and start at the end and work my way to the front.
Well, that's how they mix it up. Sometimes like the end scenarios are in the middle pages. You never know. Yeah, so I thought that was wild. Yeah, I liked the Thought Cloud system. I thought it was well implemented to, again, as far as you kind of could go. Like, there are always going to be some cracks that show up in it. Yeah. You can't be perfect. Okay, so then the last pillar of the gameplay is destruction, the RTS. I guess now is the time where it's worth mentioning how I've already mentioned it. I should describe the barriers that the game will throw up. Oftentimes, because it's encouraging you to play in the way that we're all describing, to not just mainline one thing, to be mixing and matching throughout these different pillars. They even do a kind of a lazy way to incorporate that third one. It's like you're unlocking the mystery points, and you've got to you unlock those by doing battles and other things, and then you just unlock the new files, and assuming you read them. And once you've done that, you hit that's, can be a threshold. But so there'll be things like you can't progress a person's story until, I've already mentioned, until there are 8 characters with percentage of 50%. Or you can't progress this person's thing until you've seen another event in another character's story because they intersect. Or you can't progress the story until you've hit a certain battle, until you have... Because again, they're trying to avoid some of these spoilers, right? That there are little bits of story that are being doled out throughout all of these disparate elements to create this wild tapestry. And so you'll get to points where you've got to do the battles. And similar with battles, like you can't unlock the next wave of battles until you have progressed enough characters. So they all intersect in that way, and they will all have different barriers to keep you from just mainlining one at a time. Before describing the battles, any thoughts on that system? We've kind of covered it a little bit, I think, but that maintenance of balance by locking certain things.
I think it was smart because it's one of those where I mean, personally for me, I found the RTS sections to be lackluster and would have skipped them entirely if it didn't force me into doing them for gated progression.
I think it's despite my agreement with Matt to some extent. I think putting in those locks is important because otherwise you'd have these sickos playing through one character all the way and just like completely ruin any of the mystery.
I guess it's time to do my first battle tutorial.
Oh my god.
So I believe in my like little review thing that I wrote here, the tactical turn-based, or not turn-based, the tactical RTS that almost evolved into kind of a turn-based thing was like kind of fun. It was okay. Like I didn't hate it.
It was fine. I was never mad that I was playing it, but it definitely
I was playing on casual.
Which is what I recommended to Andrew, is just like, because it is definitely, as you're totally correct, Matt, and like for me who like loved this game, I wouldn't like go to bat and say that the RTS gameplay is like really good and like is the appeal to this. Would I like have enjoyed the game just as much? I can't say whether or not I would have enjoyed it more if it wasn't there at all, because I would have
enjoyed it if it wasn't there. Would I have enjoyed it more? I don't think so.
I think that's how I say it, but I feel like maybe I still would have wanted something.
Yeah, it does help, again, break up the fact that it's a visual novel and gives you separate, like something else that can occupy your mind and like get you working and thinking in a different way.
I would have liked just like 2 less battles, maybe 3 less battles. It doesn't have to be taken away, but just a couple less. I overall, like, again, I played on casual, so it's easy. I spam the biggest attacks and just it's done.
A lot of those rocket barrages, Tomi Kitsuragi, best girl, also
Tomi
the absolute
rocks.
Also the absolute destroyer of worlds. The long range Sentinels, they fuck shit up.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, her and
there's nothing like a long-range Sentinel taking everything out while your melee-focused Sentinels are still working their way over there.
They're still plodding along.
Covering the entire map just in missiles at +8, like, over and over again. Very fun. Like, there is an element of fun there. It just, again, I just don't need quite so much of it. And because I like the narrative so much more, that makes it...
And it does add to the narrative. Like, they definitely make sure that there's narrative component to the RTS, so it's not just like a hard jut where all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I'm controlling a Sentinel.
Yes, it's what I was saying is like that when I was watching this second playthrough, I couldn't just skip all of them because there are bits of narrative that are being doled out at the beginning. Yeah. I could reliably just watch the beginning,
skip the actual middle parts,
the beginning, and then just the end. Once the terminal is closed, they give a little bit of dialogue and things move.
So Here's my biggest real complaint about looks like dog shit and everything else looks so cool, and I hate them for not making it look cool. Just give me, dude, they show the moves, at least just show them killing one of the fucking one of the kaiju for me.
I mean,
so it's
I
not
think
just pixels.
that's just
so
a cost.
that's so
that's
upsetting.
just
I
a
know
cost
I
thing.
know why. Yeah,
Again,
I know.
this must have been such, again, an expensive and difficult game to animate in general. My issue is more about the visual clarity. It was, like we already mentioned, like that final battle, which is thematically appropriate to be that that crazy and that overboard and that intense. But it's just like there's like the things just lack, they're not defined enough to know what the things really are. You start to learn what some of the units are, but like the swarms of like stuff, and again, missiles coming in, there's so much visual stimuli happening, and it's not at a level of, I don't want to say fidelity, because I'm not asking for high fidelity stuff. It was just sometimes hard to parse just what kind of was happening, because then you get like the fire effects also in the cityscape that's being represented as well. It was just like, this is just kind of messy and kind of hard to see, so it did kind of result in some of the more intense battles, just a lot of AoE spam just to kind of just clear shit out, and EMPs to knock shit down. And
do you ever use anything else on the terminal besides an EMP?
On the terminal? No, never.
That's the only thing to use. Like that's so much better
because it's cheap, because it's cheap too. Because it's cheap too. It gives you a break. But it ties into my other kind of chief complaint that is fundamental to the RTS combat section, which is the Sentinel upgrades. In my opinion, they give you too many upgrades, and they don't actually feel like any improvement.
Interesting.
Like
are you speaking specifically to like the upgrading your speed attack, or are you speaking to that and upgrading like your attack
and like your weapons, like the attacks?
So that's interesting.
Upgrading that stuff.
I did feel like a significant difference between like a +2 and a +6.
Well, like when you
+7,
it is keeping up with it is keeping you on par and on level with things.
That's fair for the most part.
And so I'm sure, if I like elected as like a challenge run to not upgrade anything, I'm sure I would have felt the lack of it at certain points.
Yeah.
But it just didn't feel rewarding enough, and there was too incremental. There was too incremental and actually too granular for not enough tangible impact of what am I doing. So it was a little bit empty brain of I'll just make this thing, the attack that I kind of like, I'll just make number go up. And there are more attacks that
make me feel good, but
and there are some attacks that get better later on, but like they're also like, they're kind of at one point tutorialized, kind of encouraging you to be like, you should try to like unlock most things on your Sentinels and tailor your which weapons loadouts you need for the specific encounter that you're going to face. Like you're going to have like flying enemies, so you got to make sure you got that you should swap out an extra gun on your melee guy for an EMP, for a ground level EMP, like a localized EMP. And I just kind of resulted to having a decent variety of things on everything, so that most Sentinels could take care of most things,
most scenarios.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to hyper specialize and really get into the weeds of making particular units particularly effective for this particular mission and then changing builds later on. It was like, it's
too much for how many combat scenarios there are. Like there's just too much.
And also I felt like you didn't need it. It just ended up being that you didn't need it. So it was just kind of fluff that I didn't really find, again, tangibly rewarding. So I was just like, okay, these attacks that I know that like, again, cover a diverse range of scenarios, let's just upgrade them and keep most people again on par with each other, because you're all kind of pulling from that same the memory chip unit. The one thing I do like though is how they introduced the meta narrative bit of explaining that that's the key of why this go of things, and it's getting a little bit into the spoiler territory, that the unlocking. It's like, so the one of the main characters, and it's an NPC that you think is for a long part is an antagonist, an actual antagonist going through, and that's Prisoner 426, and he's manipulating the scenarios behind the scenes, and it turns out what he's doing is he's unlocking your capability to upgrade your thing, and it's all about how it's because the Daimos are created from the code of a video game, and that's why it's the meta bit of that's why the activation for the Sentinels are a video game start button. Is that this is all derived from a video game code, and in universe a video game code. And
I thought it was gonna have, at that point in time, I thought it was gonna have more of a Doki Doki.
Okay, so it had a couple level of twists, but before we get into some themes and the major story spoilers, because I'm not gonna try to unpack the full plot here. That would it would take 15 hours,
multiple timelines
of analysis, and multiple timelines of myself to figure it all out. But yeah, any final thoughts on the RTS, the upgrading, that pillar of the gameplay before we kind of move into our last kind of major section here, the last pillar of this podcast episode?
3 pillars of podcasting.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think it's hurt by how good the narrative,
absolutely,
visual novel is. I think part of why and again, I didn't dislike it to the point of like not wanting. It just wasn't as good. It just not as good.
It's so interesting as I'm thinking about, you just said that, is that relationship between the story and combat is like the direct inverse in Unicorn Overlord. The story is like just good enough, and the combat is really what you're there for, and like the gameplay is much better and more interesting than the story. Again, is fairly generic, kind of tropey fantasy, young prince exiled from kingdom overtaken by a dark lord, must come back from exile, raise an army, and defeat the forces of evil.
I too played Triangle Strategy.
There's no conflicts over salt though,
Well,
so not as good.
That's what I was really there for in Triangle Strategy.
Not as good. Okay, so let's do story spoilers, and then like what we took away as like kind of the most interesting themes, and we can talk about kind of specific story moments if you'd like. I guess let's handle like the major twists, and we'll do them kind of one at a time and figure out, and we can leave room for potentially different story moments in between if we feel like that works. So like I said, in the setup, it makes it seem like it is that time travel is the main conceit here, that it is the kaiju are invading from the future, and the Sentinels are being sent back in time to stop this from happening. The kids are
Terminator stuff.
Yeah, very Terminator vibes. They're the chosen, they're the compatible, they're the ones who are going to be able to get in the robot, Shinji, and save the world. And so the first major twist comes that this is not time travel. This is not even Earth. This is a generational spaceship with different sectors, that each time period is a sector, and there's no time travel, there's just like teleportation, that the characters are just moving from the same, all timelines are moving at the same pace, that that each of these characters are moving from zone to zone that is based off of a certain era of Japan. Going back as far as the wartime, 1940s, all the way to the only one that we actually get stuff from is really 2025. It's we're timely here. There is technically stuff from a couple future timelines, but those are the ones that are already destroyed. Some of the characters originated from there. The original Morimura, the original Juro comes from there. 426, that's where they come from, like the 2160 something.
2188.
Yeah, 2188. That's the timeline they come from.
End of humanity.
And these plots are kind of then left in that regard. It's okay that this is a singular thing that's happening, that these kaiju are being created as part of this project that is this generational ship being sent out to space. So it's like, I guess as I was watching through it, I was like, oh, there are 2 levels of twists. And in a way there are. The second one is just, it's more that it's just a slight significantly greater turn of this original conceit that we'll get to. But it's basically that this is a generational ship that's being sent out into deep space with to terraform a new planet. And that's what the Deimos were, is that they were machines that were going to be propagated to terraform alien planets. And that's where it was like they were designed by one of the characters, not one of the playable protagonists, but one of the main characters. Okino was the original. Okino programmed the Deimos based off of the code from this game. They programmed the kaiju based off of this game called Deimos something, and it was a video game where there are these giant machines, and so we used this code to do that, and there all sorts of things going on there. So I guess let's just get both spoilers out of the way then. The eventual final reveal is that none of it's. I'm a little bit,
a dream.
Yeah, I'm not sure. How do I feel about that? That's like the tropiest of the trope. None of this is real. It's all a simulation. That they are actually not on the ship anymore. That they have been on a planet that's being that's been in the process of being terraformed for them, but they're in a simulation that their progenitors, the survivors of the human race, which we can talk about, like the real timeline that started this all. The process for their development was to be put into a simulation across these different zones to maintain human history and culture and technology and all this stuff, to learn skills, to develop personalities, to learn what it meant to be human in this time. And then when they were ready, mature, they would emerge from their pods and they would go and they would repopulate these planets. Due to
very Horizon also.
Due to the unforeseen issues of it's one character, one of the protagonists, or one of the original individuals. It was the original Ryoko Shinonome. She was fed up with humanity as it had devolved in that original timeline, and had put a virus into the decode software that was making them hostile, and created the invasion element. And so what has been happening is that the kaiju have just been decimating everything repeatedly. And so the central computer, Universal Control, that runs this whole ship and the project and all of this, has just been restarting the simulation over and over and over and over and over again. And there are these loops that just continue and can keep continuing over and over again. Certain characters start becoming aware of this. Again, the original Izumi and Morimura. So 426 and the original Morimura become aware of this, and they each then develop different plans to try to overcome this. You think that Juro is the villain, but he really is the one that's pushing us to what is ultimately successful. But Morimura's plan revolves around the game's title, the Operation Aegis. And it is about shutting these terminals down, which would close and make this the final loop. Basically, she's kind of like tired of it all and just kind of whether they're victorious or not, just like wants this to be the end. It's because I don't think she fully realizes that they are not 100% real. At that level, they still think that their world is somewhat real, but like caught in a time loop. Yeah. They are not aware that and that's why it is still another reveal to happen later on that this is just a simulation, not just repeated history. So the things devolve, and again, to get into the minutia of the plot is a fool's errand, and we're already at an hour. So I want to give us some time to think about so what were your takeaways from the story? Like, if you want to go thematic or narrative, you can even start with what was your favorite storyline, and who was your favorite character of the protagonist?
So I just want to say it's very interesting that he wrote a pro AI girlfriend story back in 2018. So he was ahead of the curve there.
Very prescient there, yeah.
Favorite story? I think I liked Renya Guto the most, or Nenji. I think those are probably my two favorites. And then Natsuno and Megumi are probably my other two favorites. I liked BJ.
Those are all good pulls. I think those are all good pulls. Matt, before I give mine, what about you?
I was definitely a Natsuno fan. And then Iori also, probably my top two.
This was one of the more challenging storylines from the kind of the puzzle bit. Like, it's a very simple thing. Like, it's like, in order to progress a certain way, it's just the simple fact of choosing which food you go get after school will lead you down these wildly divergent paths. And then, like, to get these
that's
things.
life, man. Sometimes you leave school and you decide you're going to go get, a corn dog from 7-Eleven, and that takes you, now you're getting robbed.
We're finding out there's an end to the world you live in. Literal edge.
I think my overall favorite in terms of largely I think it's because of the mechanics of how this story plays out is Nenji Ogata's because it's really funny. He's in a time loop type of thing. His is like he's getting stuck on a train that's about to derail.
I liked the train so much. I liked all of that. I thought that was both the most challenging puzzle section and the most fun.
Because it has elements that are running in real time.
Yes.
With like trying to pick which train do you get on.
Yes.
And who do you follow and who do you not? How do you convince your not girlfriend, Tomi Kisaragi, to not get on the train and come with me if you want to live?
Yeah.
I found that one really good, and I also really just like Nenji's personality. I mean, he's got the the best hairstyle there is. He's got the great hair. He's the thug with a heart of gold. He's the ne'er do well who just wants to be a hero.
He is my Josuke.
Yeah, he just wants to be a hero, and it's not out of this sense. His like machismo is very much a facade.
Yes.
That he puts on. And it's not just like that he's a big softie. It's that he cares. That's truly like what he that's what is like that's his core, is that it's like that he wants to help people. He wants to be useful. He wants to help somebody, and that I found that really compelling. I really also like Megumi Yakushiji. I like hers and the cat, her and Fluffy.
Yeah, that's why I like Megumi.
And
that's why I like Megumi and Natsuno. I like BJ and I like Fluffy. Like, they're both very fun secondary characters and important.
And then I just love I love seeing the bi panic and flustered nature of Hijiyama as a character.
I was about to shout that out as like my fifth, just because of that.
He's really good. And his yakisoba pan and his yakisoba pan angel.
Yep.
Another point scored for Megumi there, helping a guy out. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things going on here, and they like are tied to particular characters, right? And so there's the one thing that's a really interesting bit that, again, I'm thinking in terms of like the in-game people who are like, we're preserving all of what makes us best of us as a people. Let's make sure that one of the scenarios is fascist imperial Japan.
I know, yeah.
And let's make two of our future saviors be fanatically devoted to the Japanese imperial project. Is an interesting choice. Let's say.
Listen, if you're settling a new planet, that's probably some kind of a helpful trait to some extent, right? Like, I could see how that could be beneficial.
You gotta be protectionist. You gotta enforce your borders on the alien planet. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. That choice there, and then some of like the most complicated relationships, and that tie into what I think kind of like the ultimate theme of this is, because and we poke fun at that choice to like include the World War II era Japan as part of this bit, because I think if you're being most charitable, it's meant to look at, and this is, I think I'm looking at a more meta concept of what the game creators are offering, is that this is the best and the worst of humanity. That we are not cherry picking only the good things, because you look at the relationships between some of these characters that are leading to the most kind of toxic relationships, but also like are at the root of what the conflict is. So like we mentioned how the real world Shinonome, after the world has devolved into chaos, these like 15, because there's the 13 playable characters plus Okino plus Tamao Karabe. Those are the 15 survivors whose genetic material are being sent out. Well, they were the survivors.
Wait, was it Morimura one of the?
She's Fuyusaka. They're the same. They're the same.
I guess from that count, yeah. Okay,
they're the same person. And so that they are, that their genetic material is what it is, because they are the final survivors. The world has been destroyed by a nanomachine plague, and these are the only survivors on like a space station. And so they are developing this Project Arc to send their genetic material out with the hopes of implementing what we just described earlier. And so the original Shinonome is, seeing what the world has devolved into, the strife that was involved, but then it was the personal trauma of being manipulated by the person she loved and trusted the most, the original Tetsuya Ida, who is a bit confusing of the Shu Amaguchi, Tetsuya Ida. One, they look totally different, even though they're supposed to be the same person. It ties back to one line where they're like, he changed so dramatically. The Shu Amaguchi we know changed so dramatically in middle school, where he could have been like, the nerd, but he decided to be the cool, aloof, like kind of, the cool kid instead. So it's like, it's the divergence of the one version of him that would have become Tetsuya Ida and the non-toxic version of Shu Amaguchi. But that she's been so manipulated by Ida to commit these atrocities on his behalf that, she injects the decode virus into the Project Arc system. And that is what results in the full story of the game right there. And so it comes down to this question of, does this game have a villain? There are bad
I think it's Ida.
people.
I thought it was Ida. Like,
there are bad
I thought Ida was the villain.
But he is a bad person, but he is not the villain. He is driven by that same impulse, that same thing, that he is driven by this twisted internalized trauma of failed relationships and feeling, kind of alienated because of losing the one connection he had in the death of his beloved Tomi Kisaragi, the original the original Kisaragi, who he then tries to resurrect through the experiments with androids. Because that's another thing. I was like, when I was like first pitching this game to Andrew, I'm like, it's got time travel, it's got androids, clones, space travel, all these things. It's pulling from every single sci-fi thing it can think of, yet it manages to kind of somehow all work together into this kind of wild, tapestry of things that are like, beyond its own scope.
Well, so that's kind of why I find Ida to be the villain. Like, him trying to bring Kisaragi back in an android is just like, I don't know. There's the grotesqueness of that to me.
Oh yeah.
That I don't know. I guess if I were to call, but it's a good question. There isn't like a true villain in the sense that there usually is. I mean, I think that's a pretty good representation of humanity, though, right? Like, we're complicated. We do things that are selfish. We do things.
I'll have you know, in the visual novel of my life, I am my own true villain.
There was nobody who will see my downfall greater than myself.
I mean, I think this game has a very hopeful message ultimately about humanity, but I think it's like focused on love and how love can be both a destructive and positive force to some extent. But I think like I really love the line, I wrote it down from Inaba. No matter how far technology may come, it's humanity who always seems to make miracles come true. You've done well, children of mankind. I liked that quote of just the importance of humanity in what we can accomplish when we work together.
And that's kind of how I see is like, what is the game's ultimate message? And it's largely because it's asking this question, what is worth preserving of the human race? Like, how do we distill what is the defining feature of us as a species? And it speaks to what you just said about the positive and the destructive force of love. It is that it's not actually, history, culture, technology, any of these things, all of these achievements that we have made. None of these things are what really matter. It is this kind of voracious persistence of human relationship. And, that veracity can be bad. Can be just as bad as it can be good, and can create lots of trauma, and can be a destructive force if not channeled well. And we see that it is through the shared struggle that the characters go through, bonding together, that is what sets them down the path of constructive love, not destructive love. And that ultimately results in the very, again, the shoujo anime thing of everybody partners up, everybody's got a boyfriend,
Yeah, there's, it's to some extent it is literal like romantic love, but I think the game also does a good job of representing that more communal love in the support that characters have for non-romantic partners at the end. I think it's very evident. BJ being one of them, like that's a robot that they all like love to some, like, it's happening. I also I constantly thought about BJ from Righteous Gemstones.
Matt, what was like? What did you have any major takeaway from like the thematic core?
I mean, relatively speaking, mostly just very tropey. So there's just it's got a lot of the anime goodness in the sticking together and working together, find a solution and get your way out.
Yeah, it's a bit that I was like kind of like again confused with as I'm like trying to parse the kind of again timeline or the nature of things. So there's like the child Chihiro Morimura and what she represents as the reincarnation of the original Professor Morimura who like started the project. She is an agent that is like pushing some of these levers, but is like also hesitant to get her hands dirty. And it is not until the end where, kind of speaking to what you're just saying, that she's finally convinced to kind of throw her hat into the ring and be a definitive force for something through her through what she witnesses in this group coming together and attempting to beat the odds of staring the unbeatable in the eye and still kind of persisting in that. She's like, okay, like it's probably not going to work, but better to kind of go down swinging type of thing.
The one other thing I'll say, because you kind of alluded to this, is just how much of other sci-fi is baked into this. And I think it does a really great job of walking that line of like being tongue-in-cheek with it so that it doesn't feel derivative. It does a really good job of like you could see so many of you said Terminator, there's so many that are just very obvious in your face. But it walks that line of being
even the characters
self-aware, right?
Buffs.
Right. That's what I think. I think that's what makes it good.
They even admit it, right? They're like, oh my god, they admit it, type of thing. Like they're making direct references to, I forget what, like, because they can't say it for copyright reasons, but like they're like mentioning like Star Wars, War of the Worlds, and they call it something else.
But that's also furthered by just the whole general idea of this simulation. Like the simulation is trying to instill these eras and these relics of humanity in them. So of course it would be, when it goes haywire in a way that is very like tropey and over the top. So I thought that worked well.
Yeah, I really think it kind of walked that tightrope by being recognizable in all these ways, but then just being batshit off the walls and making things so convoluted was in its favor, right? It was new in that sense. Again, this was dealing with tropes, but it was conducted in a way that was so uniquely its own. And part of that comes with the interactive media of, again, we touched on it, right? Of like, how did you approach how you are progressing through the story, and the fact of its non-linearity just creates this persistent sense of mystery that you are just like, you're like, I think I know where this is going. I know I've seen that reference before, but oh wait, look, no, there are 2 layers or more underneath it that are actually being toyed with. Your expectations are being played with in that way, and you must slowly uncover these things through your own choices of where you progress and where you don't. So it was so unique in that fashion. I was like, okay, I've got to shout this game out. I've got to place it on our kind of pedestal of must-play games for the channel. So that's where we are today. I think this has been
I'm glad you did, by the way. I very much enjoyed this experience. Like, this and Doki Doki, you've got me, and Dispatch, honestly, you've got me peaked on this type of genre.
He's becoming cultured. Be on the lookout for your Christmas present that was in the mail.
It's actually sitting on my island. I'm about to open it.
Okay, open it and then text me after.
I will.
And there's a note in there, so make sure you read that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what led us to this episode, folks, and I appreciate you spending your time with us around the holiday. Final thing I'll give to you is like kind of the final message of the game is keep weaving the tapestry, keep the history of humanity alive, keep that spirit going, folks, and we will see you in the new year. Bye-bye.
Bye.